Masechet Ketubot, Daf Kof Yod Aleph, a long series of agadot about the importance of the land of Israel. Tenor Banan Olam Yadur Adam Be'eretz Yisrael Afilu Be'ayir Sheruba Goyim Ve'al Yadur Bechus Haaretz Ve'afilu Be'ayir Sheruba Yisrael Shekol Hadar Be'eretz Yisrael Domeh Kemi Sheyesh Lo Eloah Ve'chol Hadar Bechus Haaretz Domeh Kemi She'en Lo Eloah Shene'emar Latet Lachem Et Eretz Canaan Liot Lachem Le'Elohim. One should always live in the land of Israel, even if it's in a city that's mostly not Jewish. And that's better than living outside the land of Israel, even if you're living in a city that's mostly Jewish. It's good to live in a Jewish community, but being in the land of Israel is even more important, because anyone who lives in the land of Israel is like someone who has a God, and anyone who lives outside the land of Israel, it's as if he has no God, since the pasuk in Vayikra says, to give you the land of Canaan to be your God, meaning it's equating living in the land of Canaan with Hashem being our God. So it's only true in the land of Israel, not outside. Now, this baraita, we analyze, V'chol sheno dar ba'aretz en lo Eloah. Really, literally, if you're not living in the land of Israel, it's like you don't have a God? I mean, is that really true? Really true? No, we're not taking it literally that he has no God, but rather anyone who lives outside the land of Israel, it's as if he is worshipping idolatry. וכן בדוד הוא אומר, כי גרשוני היום מסתפח בנחלת השם לאמור לך עבוד אלוהים אחרים. וכי מי אמר לו לדוד, לך עבוד אלוהים אחרים? אלא לומר לך, כל הדר בחוץ לארץ כאילו עובד עבודה זרה. When David was running away from Shaul and he had to run outside the land of Israel, and he comes to Shaul and he says, they have driven me today, they have driven me out this day, that I should not cleave to the inheritance of God, meaning outside the Nachala, outside the land of Israel. And they said, go worship other gods. Now, no one actually told David, go worship other gods, but you see, David is equating them. To not live in the land of Israel is to not be in the Holy Land, connected with the Shekhinah, to live in other lands where idolatry is rampant, and it's very difficult to not be influenced by one's surroundings, and therefore being outside the land of Israel is compared to idolatry. So still very strong language, not as bad as having no God at all, but it's still a form of foreign worship. Okay, very strong language. Rabbi Zera hava kamishtamet mineh de Rav Yehuda de Baal misak l'Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Zera was living in Bavel and he wanted to move to the land of Israel. However, Rav Yehuda did not want him to. That was his teacher, and so he was avoiding his teacher so that he would not have to hear Rav Yehuda's disapproval of his making aliyah. Damar Rav Yehuda kol ha'olam mi Bavel l'Eretz Yisrael ober be'aseh, because Rav Yehuda said anyone who moves from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael violates a positive commandment. So this is interesting. After we just said that living outside the land of Israel is like idolatry, here we have a different view. We're going to see throughout the sugya there is more than one voice, more than one opinion about it, and especially Bavel is not just any other land. Bavel has yeshivot, it has chachamim, it's has an elevated status over and above any other random land. Shene'emar, Bavel yuval v'shamayu ad yom pokti otam ne'um Adonai. Because after all, Rav Yehuda quotes the pasuk in Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah predicts that the exile is coming, and he says, you are going to be brought to Bavel, and you will stay there and remain there. And he tells them that they should build houses and have families and prosper there, pray for the welfare of the government there, and then you'll stay there safe until the day that I remember you, and I will, Hashem says, I will recall you, bring you back to the land of Israel. So you see, Yirmiyah gives a commandment, go to Bavel, and therefore we must stay in Bavel. If you leave Bavel and make Aliyah, you're violating Yirmiyah's commandment. All right, Rav Yehuda has a good proof. Rabbi Zera says, no, look at the context. Rabbi Zera is, in fact, the Peshat. The context is that the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash, they will be brought outside until Hashem remembers his nation, and then the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash will be brought back to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. And it's not talking about the people. In fact, it's good to make aliyah, the Bizera says. But Rav Yehuda, what's he going to do with that point? Ketiv kera charina, hishbati etchem benot Yerushalayim bisbaot or bailot hasadeh. So Rav Yehuda instead quotes a different pasuk from Shir Hashirim. We could look at the full pasuk because this is going to be a central pasuk in the upcoming discussion. Mishpati etchem benot Yerushalayim, I adjure you, I make you swear, maidens of Yerushalayim, bisvaot or bailot hasadeh, by gazelles or by hinds of the field. We're going to talk about why, what that has to do with this swear. But the point is, im ta'iru, im ta'oreru et haba ad shetechpas. Do not wake or rouse love until it is wanted. In other words, the beloved here is saying, right, don't arouse, the love has to be presented, has to be given at the right time when it's going to be accepted. And you can't jump the gun, right? You're not going to ask someone to marry you on the first date. Right, that's going to scare them off. They have to be ready to accept it, and this is compared to Bnei Israel and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Bnei Israel cannot come to the land of Israel before they are wanted. You can't jump the gun. When it's redemption time, then yes, everybody will go to Israel. But before that time, remain in Bavel, and this is a vow that Hashem makes a vow on us that we should not go and make aliyah earlier than the time of redemption. That's Rav Yehuda's position. Rabbi Zera, hahu shelo yalu yisrael bechoma. Rabbi Zera says, I agree that pasuk means that that we shouldn't go to Israel too early. But this is talking about en masse, bechoma, as a wall, meaning a mass immigration to Israel should not happen until the time of redemption. But if an individual says, I want to live in the land of Israel, then that is praiseworthy. That's what Rabbi Zera says. Rav Yehuda, hishpati acharina ketib. Rav Yehuda says there's another hishpati in chapter, that pasuk was in chapter 2. In chapter 3, it says again, another vow, and so that vow is not only for people coming as a group, but even an individual. So Rabbi Zera, what would he do about that? Rabbi Zera is going to use that vow for something else, as Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina says, De'amar shalosh shavuot halalu lama. In fact, it says the vow the 3 times in Shir HaShirim. There are 3 vows. And so what's he going to do with each one of them? Number 1, that people, the Bnei Israel, should not go en masse as a big group and move to Israel before the time of redemption. Second, God makes us take a vow that we should not rebel against the nations of the world. In other words, we're going to be in exile for a while, and if we try to rebel, it's probably not going to work out well, right? And the rabbis are saying this after the revolt of 70 CE, after the Bar Kokhba revolt. Trying to make a revolt against the Romans is only going to bring destruction to the Jews. So remain good citizens and support the government until the time of redemption. So that is an important survival strategy. And the third one, the third one, God makes a vow and commands the other nations of the world that they should not subjugate the Jews too much. Right? The Jews will be subservient as people living in these different lands, but don't persecute them too much. I don't know if the nations of the world listen to this often, but a lot of times they didn't. But nevertheless, this is a kind of vision of the rabbis of what we should do in exile. Listen, don't just try to go and move and make a new repopulate Israel when it's not the time. It's not going to work. We are supposed to be in exile, right? Hashem said you need to be in exile. That's your punishment until it's time to come back. And on the other hand, be good citizens, and we hope that our foreign governments will be not so mean to the Jews. So this is actually very famous, these 3 vows, because this is in fact the basis of the Satmar Hasidim. They quote this, and that's why they don't support the state of Israel nowadays, because in their opinion, where it's not the time of redemption. And therefore, if we're going to go on a mass immigration to Israel and rebuild the state before it's time, it violates this very vow. And that's the reason that they do not support. Okay, others say it is the beginning of the time of redemption, so it is a good thing. All right, but anyway, this machloket that we see in the Talmud is continuing until today. So V'Rav Yehuda, so Rabbi Zera anyway, he agrees with this Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, and he would agree that we shouldn't make a mass migration, but I want to go individually. That's all. So that's permitted. This is only a mass migration is not allowed. So V'Rav Yehuda, what is he going to do? Where is he going to learn that even an individual should not go to Israel? And he'll answer, Im ta'idu ve'im te'oredu ketib. It says in the first pasuk, to a double language, ta'idu, to awaken and stir up. So that is that's a prohibition not only against a big group, but even a single person should not go to Israel before the time. What's Rabbi Zera going to do with the double language of awakening? So he needs this for the Rabbi Levi, because he says, why do we need these 6 oaths, the 3 that we just said, and then each of them is a double because you have this double language, so it's 3 times 2. So we have 3 that we accounted for with the 3 vows here of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, and the other ones, Inach shelo yigalu et ha'ches v'shelo yilchaku et ha'ches v'shelo yigalu hasod legoyim. The other 3 vows is that we should not reveal when the end of days is. If you know, don't tell anyone. And you should not distance the end of days. Don't say, oh, it's going to be in a very long time, because then people will lose hope. There's danger both ways. If you reveal the end, so far every prediction of when Mashiach is going to come have been wrong. So people don't have a good track record. And what ends up happening is you say, oh, it's going to be next year, in 5 years. That date comes, people build up their hope, it doesn't come, and then they go into depression. So it ends up being even worse. And a lot of very negative things happen because of these false predictions. And Rambam warns against making any false any predictions at all. But to say, oh, it's not going to happen for a long time, then also the Jews will lose hope altogether. So you have to keep it a secret. And also do not reveal the secret to the nations. What secret is this talking about is not clear, and even if I did know, I wouldn't be able to tell you because it is a secret. But it could be talking about some kind of maybe a trade secret, a community secret, maybe some secret paths in the Jewish cities, escape routes or something. In the city of En-Gedi, we found a mosaic, in fact, that talks about a curse upon anyone who reveals the city secrets. So there must have been some kind of secrets. Maybe they are some military secrets or professional secrets. I don't know what they are, because they are in fact secret. All right. Bispaot or Bailot HaSedeh. Since we quoted this pasuk in Shir HaShirim, so why is the beloved making a vow upon the gazelles and the hinds of the field? Amar bi Elazar amar Alehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, im atem mekayim et hashavua mutav im lav ani matir et besarchem kisbaot uchailot hasedeh. It's the beloved represents Hashem, who is making a vow to Israel. It says, if you keep this vow, the vow that was just above, right? If you don't start up with the nations and all that, then good, then you'll be safe. And if not, if you decide that you're going to go and take Israel too early, or you're going to go and rebel against the nations, then I will abandon your flesh, and you will be like sevi. Sevaot is a plural of sevi, like gazelles, like hinds in the fields, that the other animals just go and eat. In other words, you're going to be destroyed, and so that's why I adjure you. Otherwise, you'll be like these gazelles and hinds in the field, and hinds in the field with no protection. Okay, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Kol Adar Be'etz Yisrael Sharui Belo Avon Shneimar Ubal Yomar Shachen Haliti Ha'am Hayoshe Ba Nesu Avon. Okay, so first we start off with statements about how living outside the land of Israel is like Avodah Zarah. Then we saw Rabbi Zera wants to go to Israel. Rav Yehuda had a different opinion. Yeah, eventually, but not now. But now we're going to go back to positive things. anyone who resides in Israel, he lives without transgression. Since the pasuk in Yeshaya says, "And the inhabitant shall not say, I am sick." The people that dwell there shall be forgiven their iniquity. Anyone who lives in the land of Israel, nesu avon, he has no sins. But we have a different view, and it's very interesting because the Rabbi Elazar is from Eretz Yisrael, so he's praising the land of Israel. Rava and Rav Asher are living in Bavel, and they say, no, we read this pasuk differently, but this is talking about someone who's sick, as it says in the beginning. But in the beginning pasuk, chaliti, right? Someone who is sick, his sins are forgiven. The suffering and the spirit of sickness forgives that person's sin. It's not talking about the land of Israel. So we already see again here how some of the sages in Bavel de-emphasize the importance of Israel and raise up the importance of Bavel. Amar Rav Anan, Kol hakabur be'etz Yisrael ki'ilu kabur tachat hamizbeach ketibacha mizbach adama ta'aseh uchtiv hatam v'chiper admato ammo. Okay, some but not all. See, Rav Hanan is from Bavel, and nevertheless he is saying that anyone who's buried in the land of Israel, it's as if he's buried under the mizbeach. How do you know that? Because on the one pasuk says Mizbach Adama, it compares the altar to earth. That pasuk saying that one should build the mizbeach only out of earth and not out of cut stones. And the other pasuk said in Ha'azinu says Hashem will atone for the land of his people, admato amo. And so if you have here the word admato, and that's a kapara, so too we compare the adama here to the adama there. And here, this Adamah is talking about the land of Israel, right? Admato. So the land of Israel is called Admato, and the Mizbeach is also called Adamah. So therefore, anyone who is buried in any Adamah, any land in the land of Israel, is compared to, has a holiness, has a status like the altar itself. The altar is the center point, but all of the land of Israel has a holy status, and so that is a positive to be buried there. Okay, Rav Anan actually doesn't say you should live there, you need to live there, but he just says to be buried there. But that will be the next discussion. Ulam hava ragil dahava salik l'Eretz Yisrael nach nafshe bechus la'aretz. Ulam often would go to Eretz Yisrael. He would go back and forth a lot. He loved Israel, even though his main residence was in Bavel. And he died outside the land of Israel, right? Tu amru le Rabbi Elazar Amar ant ula al adamat teme'at tamut. So they told Rabbi Elazar that Ula died out in Bavel, and Rabbi Elazar said that, replied to him the pasuk in Amos, you shall die in an unclean land. I mean, too bad for Ula that even though he came to Israel so often, he didn't have the merit to die in the land of Israel. He had to die outside in an unclean land. They told him, I don't know about. He says, no, Rabbi Elazar, don't worry. His coffin is coming. He will be buried in Israel. So it's still right, just as good, isn't it? Because we just said how good it is to be buried in Israel. So he is going to be buried. He says, no, it's not the same. Being absorbed by the land of Israel when you're alive and dying in Israel is a much higher level than being absorbed by the land outside in Bavel and only coming in a coffin, right? If you want to, it's somewhat positive to be buried in the land of Israel if you die outside, but better to actually be living in the land of Israel and then eventually die in the land of Israel. Okay, so this would be an argument for people who want to be buried in Israel and buy a plot there. Is a good thing, but even better is to actually live there and then eventually die there and be buried in Israel. So now we have a dilemma of a person who has a need to leave Israel. So this guy lives in Israel, and his brother died without children and leaving a Yevama, and she lives in Be Hoza'eh, all the way far in Bavel. So this man came to the Rabbi Chanina and says, what should I do? I have a mitzvah of Yibum, right? And I'm willing to do it, but I'm going to have to go all the way there, leave Israel, to do the mitzvah. אמר לה, אחיו נשא כותית ומת, ברוך המקום שהרגו, והוא ירד אחריו. Okay, Rabbi Chana gives a very sharp answer, and he says, your brother, he married a kutit. A kutit is talking about a Samaritan, a disparaging name for a Samaritan, emphasizing their foreignness, that they once upon a time came from Kuta, outside the land of Israel, when Ashur mixed up all the nations. And so he means here that his brother actually married a Jew, right? The Yevamah is a Jewish woman. Otherwise, if she was not Jewish, it wouldn't be a mitzvah of Yibum. So he's disparagingly calling his brother and his wife Kutim, foreigner, outside the land, outside the Jewish people, even though they are biologically Jewish. They could be converts, doesn't matter. Even though they are Jewish, the point is that they're outside the land of Israel. So he gives them a disparaging name as foreigners. So your brother married this foreigner outside of Israel, and he died. Blessed is Hashem who killed him. Does he deserve to die for living outside the land of Israel? And you, the Avam, the brother, you're going to go and follow in his footsteps and go outside also? Then you'll deserve to die as well. All right, I guess that was a no. Do not go. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, Keshem she'asur la'aseh me'eretz Yisrael leBavel, kach asur la'aseh miBavel lish'ar arasot. So now this is Rav Yehuda in the name of Shemuel, who live in Bavel, are now going to elevate Bavel to be secondary only to Eretz Yisrael. Just like a person is not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael and go to Bavel, so they're agreeing, yes, Eretz Yisrael is the highest level, but so too, one is not allowed to leave Bavel and go to any other land. Bavel is second in status and a higher level than all other lands. Rabba v'Rav Yosef tamre tadvayo afilu mepupedita lebekube. And Rabba and Rav Yosef say, even from Pupadita, which is in Bavel, where they have the yeshivot, and go to a place close by, Bekube, but it's outside Bavel, don't move there, even though it's not so far. One person actually did move from Pupadita to Bekube, and Rav Yosef excommunicated him. Shecheb, another guy, he left Pumbedita and went to Estonia, outside the land of Bavel, and he died. Abaye said, if he wanted to be alive, he would still be alive. He just had to stay in Bavel. So you see that the rabbis in Bavel are comparing living in Bavel to living in the land of Israel. Bavel has its own holiness, not as great as Israel, but definitely greater than any other land. Rav Yosef Damar Tarvaihu, Amre Tarvaihu, Kesherin shebe Babel, Eretz Yisrael kolatatan. Kesherin shebe'ad arasot, Bavel kolatatan. So they say that those who are worthy in Bavel, those who are very righteous, then Eretz Yisrael will absorb them. In other words, they will eventually be buried and move and live in the land of Israel. Those who are righteous outside the land of Israel, then they will be merit and be worthy to eventually come to Bavel. So Eretz Yisrael is to Bavel as Bavel is to other lands. Now, lemai liyochasin. For what purpose? What do you mean absorb them? For what law does this apply to that you're absorbing? If you're saying for lineage, that their lineage will be as good as the people that live in Eretz Yisrael or Bavel, no, but the master said that all the lands are like dough. Dough is mixed up, right? It's all different ingredients mixed up. So all the lands, the people there, even though there's some community, Jewish community, we don't know the lineage of the people. Some people intermarried. They came from wherever they came. We're not sure. Was it a good conversion? And so out in the nations, everyone's lineage is mixed up. So it's considered dough compared to the purity in the land of Israel. Yet, the land of Israel is considered dough compared to Bavel. In other words, in Bavel, they were very, very strict with lineage. This is true because even the Persians were very strict with lineage. And so the Jews living there also were super strict to make sure that, if you're a Kohen, they know you're Kohen. If you're Jewish, then you can trace exactly who you are, where you came from, and they know that your lineage is totally kosher. So Bavel was a higher level in lineage even than Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, Rabban Rav Yosef can't be talking about lineage, that Eretz Yisrael is greater than Bavel, because actually Bavel is greater than Israel for that. Ela Yan Kivura, rather we're talking about burial, that the righteous people who live in Bavel will merit to be buried in Israel. The righteous people outside the land, outside of Bavel, will have a merit. They can't go all the way to Israel, but they'll have a merit to go at least to Bavel. So that's the two levels. Amar Rav Yehuda, Kol hadar beBavel kilu dar be'Eretz Yisrael, shenemar, Hoi Sion imaleti yoshevet bat Bavel. Rav Yehuda actually goes a step further. The same Rav Yehuda before, who told Rabbi Zerah, don't go to Eretz Yisrael. He says, if you live in the land of Bavel, it's as if you live in the land of Israel. An amazing thing, right? It's good. It's the same. It's not before we were saying Bavel is a little bit less than Israel. Rav Yehuda says it's the same. And he knows this from a pasuk in Zechariah that says, Hoi, Sion, escape, you who dwells with the daughter of Bavel. So you see it's comparing in parallelism Sion and people who live in Bavel. So they're equal. Amar Abaye, Naktinan, Bavel, Lo Hazya Cheble Mashiach. Tirgema Ahutzal de Binyamin Vekarule Karna de Shizabta. Abaye says, in fact, there may be even a benefit of living in Bavel. There's a tradition that those who live in Bavel will not suffer the pangs of Mashiach. Before Mashiach comes, just like when there's a birth of a baby, before the birth of the baby, which is a wonderful, happy thing, there's suffering of birth pangs by the mother. So too, before Mashiach comes, there's going to be some destruction, war, suffering in the world, and that will affect Israel, but it will not affect Bavel. So in fact, it's even better to live in Bavel while you're waiting for Mashiach. And we understand that when we say Bavel here, we mean specifically the city of Hutzal of Binyamin, and that's why people call it Karna de Shizabta, meaning the horn of salvation. This is a good place to be while awaiting for Mashiach, and in fact, even better than being in Eretz Yisrael. אמר רבי אלעזר, מתים שבחוץ לארץ אינם חיים, שנאמר ונתתי סבי בארץ חיים, אלה שסביוני בה, מתי החיים, שאין סביוני בה, אין מתי החיים. Rabbi Elazar says those the dead who are buried outside the land of Israel will not come back to life. They will not enjoy the resurrection. Because it says, I will place my glory, Sevi, in the land of the living. And we understand Sevi to mean the land that Sivioni, that my desire. Sevi means my desire. I love the land of Israel. Meteh HaChayim. So when it says Chayim, I will give life only to those who are in Eretz Sevi, that are in Israel. But if you're in a land that I do not desire, says God, then though they will not have Chayim, they will not enjoy resurrection. Metib Rabbi Abba Bar Memal, Yichyu metecha nebelati yikumun. Pasuk in Yeshaya says, your dead shall live, my dead bodies shall arise. Or your dead bodies should be. Nevelati in ancient Hebrew can be a second person. All right, your dead bodies will rise. So describing a resurrection. My love, yichyu metecha metim sheberetz Yisrael. Nevelati yikumun metim shebechutz laaretz. So to be Abba Bar Memal is going to challenge Rabbi Elazar. Why do you think that resurrection is only in the land of Israel? Look how Yeshaya has double language. Doesn't the double language mean one phrase is for Israel and one phrase is for outside of Israel? In both places, the dead will rise. According to that interpretation of Rabbi Abba, which is based on Yeshaya, what is he going to do with this pasuk in Yechezkel that says only God's desirous nation will live? And Nebuchadnezzar hu dichtiv damar chamana maitina alayhu malka de kalil ki tabyam. This is referring to Nebuchadnezzar. And Chamana says, I will bring you a king who is as swift as a deer. Nati Sevi, the Sevi is a reference to Nebuchadnezzar, so it's not talking about desirous, but rather actually a deer that is quick. That refers to Nebuchadnezzar, who's going to come quickly to the land of Israel and bring destruction. So it's not a positive pasuk, it's actually a negative pasuk. ambiguity of the word sivi and what it means, and so he can explain the pasuk that way. So according to the Rabbi Abba, a resurrection will happen in Israel and outside of Israel. Amar le Rabbi mikra acher ani doresh noten neshama le'am aleh veruach laholechim ba. So Rabbi Elazar says, I have yet another pasuk. I agree. The pasuk in Yechezkel is ambiguous, but there's another pasuk in Yeshaya, chapter 42. This was the haftarah for Parashat Bereshit that we just read. It says Hashem gives breath to a nation on the land and spirit to those who walk on the land. Yeshaya is making Bereshit reference, right, to give soul into a body, veruach, and walking. All that is in the beginning of Bereshit. But here it's not talking about Adam, but rather to the nation of Israel. And so here it says clearly that God will bring new breath, meaning future resurrection, to the people that are there on the land. Aleha laholechim ba means only to the land. Okay, but the answer, Rabbi Abba says, Ve'ela ketib nebelati yukumun. All right, what are you going to do with the other pasuk? I already told you that it says it twice in Yeshaya, one for Israel, once for outside of Israel. And Rabbi Elazar will answer, Ahu ben nefalim hu dichtib. Oh, that double language there is talking about stillbirth. Someone who is stillborn outside the land of Israel, they merit resurrection. After all, right? What chance did they have to move to the land of Israel? They weren't even able to be alive when they were born. So they even if they're buried outside, they will be resurrected. This is a consolation to families who suffer that tragedy of having a stillborn, right? Don't worry, they will, even though they didn't have a life now, they will have a future life. That's what it's talking about. But anyone else outside the land of Israel, sorry, no resurrection for them. Rabbi Abba bar Memal, hay noten neshama le'am aleha, mai avid le. So now what's Rabbi Abba going to do with this pasuk of giving life on the land? It sounds like only on the land, and not only on the land of Israel, and not outside. So how are you going to interpret that? Maybe I learned to be Abahu. Tamar be Abahu. Afilu shivcha kanani sheberetz Yisrael mubtach la shehi bat haolam haba keti bacha le'am aleha uchtiv hatam shevu lachem po im hachamor am hadome lachamor. Rabbi Abba, who thinks that the people in Israel and outside the land of Israel both enjoy resurrection, he will explain this pasuk in Yeshaya that teaches that even a Canaanite maidservant in Israel, even though she is not fully Jewish, nevertheless she also is sure to gain the access to the world to come. Since it says the word la'am aleha, the nation that's in the land, what nation? He says not talking about Israel, but rather he's comparing this word am to the word im hachamor. Now the word im hachamor, this is said by Avraham. He says to his na'arim, you stay here with the chamor. Now we wonder, what does it matter? Why does he have to mention the chamor? Just say you stay here. All right? Why does he have to say you stay here with the donkey? So Midrash says, it reads im with as am. You, a nation who is compared to a donkey. So this is very disparaging Midrash. Nevertheless, because we have this word am here that refers to other nations, and the word am aleha in Yeshaya, we actually learned something positive to it, that even though this nation is in some ways similar to a donkey, even they, because they live in Israel, they will get a share in the world to come. Veruach laholechim ba. The rest of the pasuk, in spirit to those who walk there. Why specifically walk? Amar Rabbi Amar bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Kol hamehalech arba amot be'eretz Yisrael mubtach lo shehu ben haolam haba. Anyone who walks 4 amot in the land of Israel is sure to gain a place in the world to come. Agadot in general, as many point out, speak sometimes in exaggeration. So I don't think that means you can just walk 4 amot and otherwise be a low life that you'll gain a world to come. But it means walk and with the appreciation of land of Israel, all that it stands for, all the morality and all the mitzvot that represents, and walk there, then sure to be a part of the world to come. Now, question. Rabbi Elazar this whole time is arguing that people are only resurrected in Israel. Nobody outside land of Israel will be resurrected. Really, Rabbi Elazar? What if someone's righteous and they don't live in Israel? They're buried outside. They're not going to be resurrected? They will be resurrected, but they're going to have to roll to Israel first and only then be resurrected. And so that's a bit of a pain. So better to be buried, so you'll be in Israel to be close by. But they will be resurrected. They just have to roll there first. Wait a second, if they have to roll, then that's going to be a lot of suffering. So should the righteous have to suffer because of it? And Abba says no, they'll have tunnels. They'll go right through the tunnels, super fast, no suffering, and so don't worry. The righteous people, even according to the Rabbi Elazar, we don't want to accept that the righteous people won't enjoy the resurrection. And now we're going to talk about Yaakov, who dies in Egypt. That will be a good example of a righteous person. And then he's mummified, but then he's taken to Israel, right? He commands his son Yosef, right, that you should take me and to Israel and bury me in Israel. So Amar Kana Devarim Bego Yodaya Yaakov Avinu shesadik gamur haya ve'im metim shebechutz ha'aretz hayim lama etriach et banav. So Karma says there must be some kind of inner meaning here, because didn't Yaakov know that he was a righteous person? And if the dead who are buried outside the land of Israel can still be resurrected and roll and go through these tunnels, so why did he trouble his son to take him to Israel? So there's a challenge to what we said just above, that the righteous people buried outside the land of Israel, don't worry, they'll roll in the tunnels, they'll be fine, they'll be resurrected. If so, why did Yaakov have to be buried in Israel? And the answer is Shema lo yizke lemechilot, because Yaakov was worried, even though he knew he was righteous, but maybe he was afraid. Maybe he would not merit the tunnels and he would have to roll and he'd be suffering. So he said, take me to Israel just in case I have some demerit and I won't merit this the tunnels. And similarly, when Yosef died, he also was mummified and he remained in Egypt, and he told Bnei Israel, when you eventually go out, remember to take my bones out of here and bring me to Israel. And Yosef this would seem to be unnecessary if Yosef knew that he was a righteous person, and if you think that righteous people outside the land of Israel are resurrected and they'll go through the tunnels and they'll be fine. So why did he bother the nation to have to carry his coffin all the way through the desert, 400 parsa? So the answer is again, Shema lo yizke lemechilot. He was worried maybe he won't merit to have the tunnels and have to suffer, so better to be there already. Shalchu le'achuhi le'Rabba. Rabbah, famous third generation Amorah in Bavel, had some brothers who lived in Israel, and the brothers wanted to encourage him to come and make aliyah. So they sent him the following message: Yodei Yaakov shesadik amur haya. And so they sent him this agadah that they saw before. Even though Yaakov knew he was righteous, still, right? He said, I want to be buried in the land of Israel. Who knows? So if Yaakov Avinu wanted to be buried there, you too, you should come and join us here. Ilfa mosif ba devarim. Ilfa added some more things to this statement to Rabbah. Maaseh be'achad she'mistayin al isha achat bikesh lered. Kevan sheshama kazot gilgel ba'atzmo ad yom moto. There was a person who was suffering because he loved a certain woman outside the land of Israel. So he wanted to leave Israel so he can go and marry this woman. But when he heard this agadah, he said, forget it. I'm not leaving outside of Israel, even though I'm going to lose out on this relationship. Nevertheless, It's better to live in the land of Israel, and he suffered because of that until the day he died. Interesting, uses the word gilgel ba'atzma, that he had to lower and suffer because of that. But he wanted to merit in being there and not have to do the gilgul, not have to roll. So it's the same word. Okay, so that should be further encouragement. That Ilfa even heard that story, and he said, I'm never going to leave the land of Israel. You too, Rabbah, you should come. And Rabbah's brothers further wrote in the letter, even though you are a great sage. True, everyone recognizes that. But still, learning on your own is not the same as learning from a teacher. So come to Israel so you could learn from the great sages that are here. And not just learn on your own. You're the greatest sage in Bavel, so who are you going to learn from there? And Rabbah, we know what you're thinking. You're going to say, well, I don't have a teacher. Who am I going to go study with in Israel? No, come, Rabbi Yochanan, the greatest sage of all Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael. He's still around. He's still alive. He lived for a long time. He was like for a second generation. And so, Rabbah, come and study with Rabbi Yochanan. That's another benefit. And now, if you don't come into Eretz Yisrael, the brothers say, we still have some important advice for you, some health advice. Number one, don't sit too much, because sitting is not good for your bottom, can cause hemorrhoids. And don't stand too much, because standing too much can give you heart trouble. Don't walk too much, because that's not good for sight. What should you do? Divide it into three. You should sit a third of the time, stand a third of the time, and walk a third of the time. All right, that is good advice, not to sit too long, certainly. And also get enough steps in. Okay. Kol yeshiva she'en ima semicha amida nocha hemena. Some more advice about standing and sitting. If you're sitting without support, right, without a back or something, then it's better to stand, more comfortable to stand than to sit without support. Amida sakadatech v'amat amida kasher leb. Hold on. Is it really better to stand? You just said that standing leads to heart disease. Ela yeshiva she'en ba semicha amida sheyesh ba semicha nocha hamenu. No, we meant is that if you sit without back support, then standing with support, you could lean on something, is better. So sitting or standing without any support, that is both not good. But better to have something to lean on, even if you're standing. These three sages, will identify them, all said the same thing. Halacha ke'Rabbi Yehuda bifradot. So this is another thing that they said in the letter. This has nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael, but while we're quoting their letter, they mentioned a few important things. They wanted to tell them the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda regarding female mules. Detanya Rabbi Yehuda omer pirda shetaba'a en marbein aleha lo sus v'lo chamor ela minaha. A female mule in heat, you should not mate the female mule with a horse or a donkey, because that would be kil'ayim. Rather, you have to mate her with one of her own kind, another mule. All right. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Yitzchak ze Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha. Shimon ze Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. Shav Amri la Resh Lakish. Oshaya ze Rabbi Oshaya b'Rabbi. It's identifying these three sages who were in the letter that were not called by their full names. Yitzchak is referring to Yitzchak Napacha. Shimon could be either Shimon ben Pazi, or it could be Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, known in the Talmud Bavli as Resh Lakish. So we're not even sure which one it is. Oshaya is Rabbi Oshaya, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. That halacha was referring to a hini, which is pictured right here. They are somewhat less common than mules because they're not as useful or as strong as the male mules. But nevertheless, the point is that we can only mate this female mule with another male mule, not with a horse or a donkey, even though it is a product of a horse and a donkey. All right, back to the theme of resurrection. The those who are ignoramuses, who do not study Torah, will not enjoy resurrection. Shenemar metim bal yichyu. Those who are already considered dead because they're not using their life for anything productive, they will, all the more so, will not benefit from future life. Tanyana mehachi metim bal yichyu yachol lakol tamodoma refaim bal yakumu bimrape atzmo medivre Torah hakatuv medaber. So we're just taking the full pasuk that says metim bal yichyu refaim bal yakumu. The original is just a parallelism saying same thing twice. Those who are dead will not live. Those who are shades, meaning just weak like ghosts or shadows, they will not arise. So the Gemara is asking, Metim bal yichyu, if we had that alone, it would sound like all dead will not arise. Can it be that no one will have resurrection? No, the second clause is explaining the first. Only those are rifaim, we're taking in the sense of weak. Those who are weak when it comes to learning Torah, they're lax in their energy to go learn Torah, and therefore they're ignoramuses. That's what it's talking about. They will not arise, but others who do will arise. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan, lo nicha lemarayhu dem amart lehu hachi, hahu bemarpeh atzmo lavodah zarah hu dichtiv. Rabbi Yochanan said that Rabbi Elazar, God is not pleased with what you said. In other words, Rabbi Elazar here is saying that ignoramuses, which is most Jews, just regular run-of-the-mill Jews who aren't so learned, none of them are going to be resurrected. Rabbi Yochanan was bothered by that, and he said Hashem would be bothered by you saying that, disparaging people who are just because they're not great sages. So rather, he explains the pasuk differently. Someone who weakens himself, weakens his will, and gives in to idolatry, that's what it's talking about. They will not be resurrected. But as long as someone is strong against idolatry and they believe in Hashem, then that's good enough. Amar le mikra acher ani doresh. Rabbi Elazar says, fine, you're going to disagree with that pasuk. I'm sticking to my guns, and I will have another pasuk to prove my point. Dichtib kital orot talech talecha va'ares refaim tapil. A few Pesukim later, in that very same chapter in Yeshaya, says that Hashem, your dew is like a dew of light, and the earth will bring life to these refaim, to these shades or these weak ones. What does that mean? Kol mishtamesh be'or Torah, or Torah mechayehu. V'chol she'en mishtamesh be'or Torah, en or Torah mechayehu. Says, we're talking about your light is like dew. Just like dew goes into the ground and brings to life the dead seeds, so too, God, those who use your Torah, which is light, they will be resurrected, and those who do not enjoy and use the light of the Torah, those who do not study Torah, they will not be resurrected. So Rabbi Elazar has another proof. That's only the resurrection is only for the sages. Kevan dechaziyet dekamistaer. Rabbi Elazar saw that Rabbi Yochanan was now upset. Because even though he had a good proof, but Rabbi Yochanan cared for the whole community. He wants everyone to be able to enjoy the world to come. Amar le Rabbi masati lehem takana min Torah. So Rabbi says, wait, don't worry, I found a way to fix them and it's in the Torah. V'atem adebakim b'Adonai Elohechem hayim kolechem hayom v'chi efshar ledibukei b'shechina v'haketib ki Adonai Elohecha esh ochela. The Torah says, Moshe is talking to everyone who cleaves to God, you will be alive like this day. In other words, you will live again. So it's promising future life to everyone. Now, what does it mean? Those who cling to Hashem. Is it possible to cling to Shekhinah? It's not a physical presence. How can you do that? Hashem is compared to fire, in fact. Can you cling to fire and not get burnt? אלא כל המסיא ביתו לתלמיד חכם ועושה פרק מעטה על תלמידי חכמים ומענה תלמידי חכמים מנכסיו מעלה עליו הכתוב כאילו מתדבק בשכינה. Rather, when it says cling to God, it doesn't mean you can't do that literally, but rather it means to cling to a Torah scholar. So if you're not a Torah scholar yourself, then someone who marries off his daughter to a Torah scholar and then gives support to him, or you do business with a Torah scholar and give him a good deal in trading with him. and helping him in his business, or someone who in any way gives benefit to a Torah scholar from his money, the Torah says that is like clinging to the Shekhinah, and that is a path, in fact, for Amei Haaretz to gain resurrection by supporting those who do study Torah. When also in Devarim it says to love God, listen to his voice, to cleave to him. This is another midrash. It's also in the Sifrei. That says, is it possible to cling to God? Ela kol hamesi b'to letamid chacham, v'aseh p'rak man tamid chachamim, v'ameneh letamid chachamim v'nechasa, b'alei alav k'katuv, ki'ilu middabek b'shechina. You can't do it literally, but rather through supporting those who study Torah. That is a way to be as if one is clinging to the Shekhinah. אמר רבי חייא בר יוסף, עתידין צדיקים שמבספסין ועולין בירושלים, שנאמר ויסיסו מעיר כעשב בארץ. Rabbi Chiya says in the future, the righteous people will sprout forth and appear in Jerusalem. As it says, they blossom out of the city. The people will blossom like grass of the earth, right? They just come up, they're buried underground, so yeah, they will, just like, just like vegetation sprouts up from the ground, so too will the people in resurrection. When it says the city in this pasuk in Tehillim must be talking about Jerusalem, because in Melachim also refers to the city, this city, and is referring to Yerushalayim. Amar Rabbi חייא בר Yosef, עתידין צדיקים שיעמדו במלבושיהן, קל וחומר מחita. Don't worry, when you're resurrected, you're not going to be naked, but rather you'll be resurrected with clothes on. And we can know that from a kal vachomer, from a stalk of wheat. When you're going to plant seeds of wheat, you plant them just the seed by itself without anything on it. It's naked. But yet when the wheat grows, it has the layers of chaff on top of it. That's his clothing. So righteous people who are buried with everyone is buried with clothing on, with the burial shrouds, all the more so that they will get up and be dressed. Okay, what kind of fashion? Will they be up-to-date fashion? Doesn't say. Amar Rabbi חייא בר יוסף, עתידת ישראל שתוציא גילוס כאות וכלי מלט, שנאמר יהי פיסת בד בארץ. Talking about things sprouting from the ground miraculously. Also in the future, Israel, the agriculture of Israel will be so fantastic that an entire cake, a whole finished cake will grow from the ground. And also wool clothing. You won't have to get the wool and spin and all that. It'll grow from the ground already made. As the pasuk in Tehillim says, abundant grain be in the land, and pisat means like a hand or a palm that you can just go and take it. It'll be already there, already, and valuable. The truth is, if you look at agriculture today and you see the tractors and the combines, by the time they pass through, just in 1 second, the machine is already harvested and removes the chaff and has it all prepared for the next level of processing. It's like almost flour by the time it gets in on the tractor already itself. Okay, tenor banan hi pisat bar ba'aris berosh harim. Continuing with that pasuk, that this abundant grain be on the land and on the mountains. Amru atida chita shetitamer kadekel ve'ola berosh harim. That in the future the stalks of wheat will be so high, they'll be as high as a palm tree and go up to the top of the mountain. Now you're going to say, well, it seems like a great blessing, but what about the person who has to reap it? He's going to have to reap this giant thing. It's very difficult for him. Talmud Omar yerash kalebanon pirya kadosh baruch מביא רוח מבית גנזיו ומנשבה עליה ומשרה את סולתה ואדם יוסר אצלם בלא פיסת ידו וממנה פרנסתו פרנסת אנשי ביתו. Rather, don't worry, we have a solution to that also. Hashem will bring a wind and it will blow, and that will make all of the grains fall from the stalk of wheat, and all you have to do is go out and just pick up a palm full of flour. It'll be all prepared there, and you take it home, and the farmer will have livelihood for his household. And in fact, today, right, farmers with these GPS tractors, they don't even have to drive the tractors. They press a button, tractor goes, and it brings back the finished product of the wheat all ready to go. Im haylib keliot chita. Back to ha'azinu, that Hashem is going to feed you with the kidney fat of wheat. The fat means here the fat that's in the wheat. Why is it comparing the sustenance of wheat to fat? That the wheat is going to be as big as the two kidneys of a big ox. And don't be astonished and think it's impossible. In fact, one time people went and found that there was a turnip that was so big a fox made hollowed it out and lived in it. And they weighed that turnip and found even without the part that it dug out, it was 60 litra, and the big litra of sipori. Okay, here's a pretty large turnip. This one itself is not as big for a fox to live in, but if a turnip can be so big, so too a piece of wheat can be as big as an ox kidney. Tanya, Amar Rav Yosef, Maaseh b'shichin b'echad sheniach lo aviv shelosha badeh hardal v'nifshach achad mehen v'imsu bo tish'a kabin hardal v'esav sikkechu bo sukat yosrin. Another example of giant vegetation. One time in Shichin, a village in Eretz Yisrael, a father had left his son 3 branches of mustard. This is what mustard usually looks like when it's grown, and you get the seeds of the mustard, different types. So usually they're not that big, but these were so big that one of them broke, and he found on one branch alone 9 giant measurements of mustard, and that branch itself broke, and with its wood they were able to roof a booth for artisans. Just from one mustard branch they could make a whole booth. Okay. אמר רבי שמעון בן תחליף, הכלח של קירוב הניח לנו אבא, והיינו עולים ויורדים בו בסולם. Rabbi Shimon ben Tachlif has a similar story regarding a cabbage stalk that his father left him. It was so tall they could climb up and down it with a ladder. So this may be the source of Jack and the Beanstalk story. And on that high point, we'll end here, and we'll finish off the rest of the Agadah on the last daf tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.